what there was to do next. You heard about cities putting curfews. You heard about counties putting stay-at-home and shelter-in-place edicts, and that was on the table. But there wasn't a sentiment in the area that it would happen to quote-unquote us. I'm not from there, so not necessarily me, but just the general population there. I would go into restaurants, supermarkets, drive by ski resorts, and they would be packed. And this was about 4, 5, 6 days after the NBA had shut down, and when we were in full crisis mode, and when we were hearing from the federal government that tough decisions will have to be made. It just seemed that while the governor was transmitting information, however it was being transmitted didn't seem to stick with the general population. So it's good to, the point I want to make is it's good to know your audience and be able to tailor your message very clearly, concisely, and to be able to strike a chord with the population that it's serious. Now, I'm only talking about one area of a very large state, so I don't know how the message was received in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Fresno, but what I had seen in that section of the state was that this isn't that big of a deal for us, yet. So when we'll make the decision when necessary. So it seemed to be a decisive type of leadership, but one that only trickled out to the population. The next person I'd like to talk about briefly is Governor Phil Murphy. Being from New York and seeing the various news conferences, we do get New Jersey's news conferences as well. It's been interesting to see how Governor Murphy has handled this. I don't know the governor too well. I'm not saying personally, but just from a political standpoint. It's been an interesting kind of expression that I've seen come from the governor. It's a very empathetic tone in a lot of ways, which is interesting because New Jersey is often seen as a strong-headed, very tough state, very much in the way New York is, but I would even say more so in New Jersey. And to see a tone in the press conferences of very serious but very warm is interesting. It was not what I would have expected. But at the same time, there's a lot of tough talk coming out, which is a very New Jersey type of dialogue. He's the one governor that I've heard that has been very serious about sending police into the communities to make sure that they go home, that you shouldn't be out in the streets. And if I have to send people after you, I'm going to send people after you. So it's been an interesting mix of the two. As I said, the two news conferences that I've seen with him speaking, it's been interesting that he has that more caring, empathetic tone, but at the same time, don't forget, I have the back of my hand. I'm going to slap you down if necessary. And again, it's about the audience you're talking to. And just I have family from New Jersey, a lot of friends from New Jersey. It seems to be seeping through. I know New Jersey is a very opinionated state, and they have a lot of opinions about the governor, just like a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Governor Cuomo in New York State. But for the most part, I have not seen a lot of the criticism or frustration or anger that I have seen, say, with Governor Jay Inslee or with Donald Trump that's been out there. So as far as my observation, and please provide feedback on anything I'm saying, if I am misconstruing messages or just misinterpreting what I'm seeing. Moving on to New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio. New York City has around 15,000 cases. We very quickly, because of our density, became the epicenter of the crisis in the United States. Part of it, as I mentioned, was the decision to expand testing aggressively on the state level, which has been beneficial because the numbers might simply reflect that we are identifying who may be infected better, but this has been very, very tough on all New Yorkers, particularly those in New York City. The general viewpoint is that the mayor's leadership in this has been, to put it lightly, uncertain and ineffective. If you're not familiar with New York State politics at the moment, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio do not like each other. I always joke that it's two warring Italian families from the old country going at it. And it's actually showing during this time of crisis. And what's really concerning in a lot of ways is that, to a lesser extent, the contradictions between the governor and the mayor are on display here, but it's on a more national level given the crisis. So, for example, the mayor said that he was thinking about instituting a shelter in place, at which point the governor said, not only can you not do that, you won't do that. And so that creates a vision in terms of the average New Yorker of, what's the mayor's role in all of this then? It makes you question that. And one thing in watching Governor Cuomo's speech is he has acknowledged that he has to defer to the mayor and to other municipalities on certain things like maintaining streets, local parks, accessibility, local police force, and such. But in terms of the message, what I have seen from the mayor has been a lot more combative, a lot more direct in terms of his management style. He is seen widely as just kind of a loose manager in general, whether you like that or not. That's his general management style. And he is one of, whether folks like it or not, he is one of the leading progressive figures in the country and really touts that. And what I've seen in terms of news articles and press conferences is that it's really more about the principle and the message for him. One news conference, he was looking directly into the camera and expressing how angry he was and how he's frustrated with the federal government and that he's going to fight the federal government, but that he's proud of New Yorkers and that New Yorkers are better than the federal government response. And I can see a lot of people enjoying and liking that tough talk, but it misfires with a lot of people because it just seems combative when it's unnecessarily combative. It's not done in a Ray Nagin type of way. If you remember during Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin shot to fame because he went on a radio show and just railed at the federal government. But it was done in a way where there was a need, there was a call to address the crisis. And while there's still that call, when you are overshadowed by a very strong personality who has shown decisive and compassionate leadership, it's really tough to stand out. And with the mayor, this is hearing second nature, not initially taking the crisis seriously, not wanting to close schools and such. Whether that's a good decision or not is anyone else's opinion. And him going to the gym, despite talks about shutting gyms down and getting his last run on the treadmill. And optics tend to be important, and it has been seen as, what is this mayor doing? Why is he out and about when all of us are being told we should go home? Why is he fighting Donald Trump? Why is he fighting the administration when we're just looking for answers? And so a lot of people have looked at the mayor's message as not hitting the mark, as not really reaching those New Yorkers in the way Governor Cuomo has in a lot of ways. And it's really unfortunate because when you're the mayor of the largest city in New York, you should be viewed upon as, that's my mayor, that's my leader. And just what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing, it hasn't hit in that fashion. And it goes to show that that type of management style may be good on a day-to-day basis. When you're dealing with an issue or you have your principles, such as the progressive cause, your message may be a rallying cry, and it may be effective in terms of getting people excited because there's a quote-unquote common enemy here. But in times of crisis, the idea of coming together is usually more important. The clarity on what we should do, and when we're hearing that we should stay at home, but our leaders are going out to the gym, it sends a mixed message. So the more laid back type of managerial approach may not be effective during a crisis. Finally, I'd like to touch upon Donald Trump. And the reason I left Mayor de Blasio and Donald Trump for last is, in a lot of ways, they are on opposite ends of a very similar spectrum. The way I say that is, when I was talking about Mayor de Blasio, is that the message has been unclear and it's been somewhat combative. And I think that's what a lot of people who are not diehard Trump supporters, because when you're a diehard Trump supporter, you are a diehard Trump supporter. But the general consensus is that Trump has not been clear with his message. He has been combative. Everyone is asking today, in the last couple of days, where's Dr. Fauci? He fired his chief of staff because he was confronted by the chief of staff. And so, while, interestingly enough, objectively, I do have to say that Trump has comparably been calmer in terms of how he's been at the podium and the message that he's been conveying. But there's a general consensus that there's been misinformation given, that his frustration with this whole crisis is clear, but in the sense of, when are we getting back up to speed? When are we getting back to business? The whole Easter deadline in terms of getting the economy, quote unquote, back up and running has been a point of contention for a lot of people, because things are still uncertain. And so I think a lot of people are asking, well, where are we that Easter is going to be certain? How can we be sure of that? The experts, the scientists, are saying one thing and we're hearing another. So while I see that Easter deadline being inspirational to a lot of people, it is based on lack of information, or so it seems. It just seems that it's a personal desire. And when personal desires tend to seep in to leadership, the purpose and the goals tend to skew a little bit. And so that's what I feel people are seeing with Donald Trump and seeing with Bill de Blasio, is that there's a personal aspect to all of this, that there's some gain to an extent that they can receive in all this. Sure, politicians have big egos. Sure, they are quote unquote in it for themselves. But when it boils down to it, these folks who are quote unquote doing it for themselves have shown different types of leadership as we've gone along. Sure, of all the people I mentioned, and every single leader, we would like to see strong, decisive leadership and to see folks working together and collaboratively and working towards a similar minded goal. But unfortunately, as is often the case, when self-interest takes hold or when you become overly principled, it becomes problematic. We're seeing that in Congress right now. It's the typical Republican Democrat. We can't come to an agreement. It's the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. That's not really leadership. There's a $2 trillion package on the table that has been deliberated for days. And while things should be deliberated, when you start nitpicking over little things and not showing decisive action, decisive leadership, and instead showing bluster, it doesn't lead to confidence. It doesn't lead to calm.